Good afternoon, John, and brothers and sisters watching this. Welcome to August.
Hey, Marty.
How are you today, sir?
Feeling rushed, a lot going on, and I'm here breathing, calming, and ready to do whatever it is we're going to do today.
You know, it's interesting. I've noticed, even when you were saying that, I noticed that I have this tendency to hold my breath a lot, and to sometimes it even feels like a chore just to breathe deeply. It's like a resistance. It's very, you know, it's obviously years and years and years of holding my breath in a certain way and completely unconsciously. But I've been paying attention to this more regularly recently. And even when I feel relaxed otherwise, I sometimes find like this in the solar plexus, it feels constricted. In fact, I feel that way right now. And I'm feeling, other than that, I'm feeling peaceful and calm and happy and accomplished. So
part of what I've discovered about myself is part of the trauma is habituated shallow breathing. And shallow breathing is I don't know if I'm going to say it for me, is like a hypervigilant place. It's a place of impending threat, or the how I hold in the life force that was trampled on as a child, and actually me feeling alive. Any feeling, which means I'm alive, is seen as a threat to exposure, to ridicule, to being chastised and or physically or abused. So I see that a lot in clients, and well, a lot of most people, and people will comment on me. It's like, you take a lot of deep breaths, and I do, because that's I've trained myself, and it's become subconscious, and not so subconscious, because I do it automatically when I'm feeling stuck or in my head or out of that knowing place that I like to be.
you know, it's interesting, as you were commenting on that, I was contemplating the possibility of even doing a brain scan, because and notice this, somehow the brain is sending a command to our torsos and to our breathing muscles to breathe shallowly.
Yeah.
And it would be very interesting to contrast my brain scan with yours, since you have made a commitment to yourself, an intention to notice and then to breathe. Those are my words of what I heard you say. And therefore there's a different brain signal going to your breathing apparatus than what you used to do.
Right.
Because it's also hardwired. We've talked about this before on the podcast. That's sometimes why it seems so difficult to see change occur, because there's this we're dealing with this neurophysiological apparatus that's a manifestation of our emotional defense mechanism. And so change requires a lot of things happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
And the irony is, it's like I'm not in charge of that.
Right.
And this, other than to say that's my intention, other than to tell my subconscious, or to tell God, however anybody wants to conceive of this, that this is my will. My will is to do this differently, and this is the differently that I want.
Yep.
So I can set an intention, which I've never done before, John. I can set an intention to notice when I'm breathing shallowly, so that I can make a different choice.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
hadn't set that intention, but that's something I've been noticing for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then when I breathe deeply, I'm sending oxygen. I'm sending a lot more oxygen into my body, and oxygen nourishes the brain. And there's probably other stuff you may be more familiar with that's also going on when I'm breathing deeply in terms of just the physiological dynamic that's going on.
Yeah, and it's an outward sign of, well, peace, serenity,
Right.
calmness, safety. That I've worked real diligently. I was going to say hard, but it's not really hard, like the old context, diligently about shifting my behaviors. And when I touch one aspect of myself, I touch all aspects of myself. So I
Right.
touch behaviors, I affect the emotional and spiritual. I touch the spiritual, I affect the emotional and physical. So
I would suggest to you and to the listeners, it's not only diligent, but it's loving.
mm,
Because ultimately what I'm doing here is I'm committing to unconditional love of myself and others in that order.
mhm.
And so any attention that I lavish on myself, on my process, is a loving attention.
Yes. Yeah, paying attention. It's nurturing. The first
Right.
aspect of nurturing is simply to notice and then make a choice of what you want to do with what you're noticing. That's was dawned on me one day. It's like nurturing is for women, nurturing is for people with breasts. And then I just got, when I can nurture, I can, if there's an infant in front of me, I can notice that it's an infant and then act appropriately with what I've noticed. And that's nurturing. It's like, oh my God, it's too simple. So
I do think that nurturing is a process mothers and fathers both do.
oh, absolutely.
And there may be a slightly different flavor to that, in general, but it's all nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's
Well,
not, or if it's not, or if it's withheld.
correct.
It can be withheld by both parents.
When I had my children were small, young infant, I actually thought that it was her job to nurture it.
Yeah.
And I just waited around until it could throw something at me and I could throw it back. And that's where I came in. And I missed out on several years of my children's life. So, yeah.
It's very funny, funny, not haha, but intriguing. The
Mm-hmm.
messages, how deeply buried the messages are and how automatically we follow them until something happens that opens our eyes and we go, oh, is that true?
Right.
And oftentimes it's a trauma of some kind that is the eye opener.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
What can I do? Help me.
Right. When the pain gets greater than the fear of moving some other place.
Right. I get up off the rusty nail.
Yeah. My a story that's in alignment with this, when my grandmother died, she died of a heart attack back when I was 10, 12. And I had cousins that were 5, 6, 7 years younger than me. And I was talking to one of my cousins here recently, a long time after my grandmother died. And we were talking about, her dying of a heart attack. And she said, oh, John, when mom and dad said grandma died of a heart attack, my thought was, how did they get the attack into the heart?
Right.
And she said, the only thing I could think of is that they hit him in the mashed potatoes. So every time she had mashed potatoes, she was looking for the tacks because she didn't want a heart attack. And it made perfect sense to her. And she diligently looked in the mashed potatoes for the tacks. And so, It's an example of not having guidance or being talked to like you mean something as a child. It's like, and explaining things and talking and nurturing and listening to the kids. So
There was a columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle in the 80s and 90s when I moved there. His name was John. I can see his. It'll come to me. He wrote a series of columns on what he called mondegreens. And mondegreens are just a word for the misinterpretations
oh
of words that we hear X even though Y is what was said.
yes, yeah, yeah,
And
that's
it was from some British poem. He laid him on the green,
right.
and the person heard it was Lady Mondegreen as
Yeah.
royalty.
Yeah.
So I remember for years and years and years, remember the song Donovan, Catch the Wind?
Mm-hmm.
And so the line is, ah, but I may as well try and catch the wind. But I heard it as, ah, but I mears will try to catch the wind. And I go, what's mears?
Mm-hmm.
Just years and years and years before I heard what the line actually was. Like, oh.
Yeah,
It's like the heart attacks.
I began looking up YouTube so I can really like read what they're saying, because I'm not hearing what they're saying, or I'm making it my own. It's like, so.
Well, it's not on our list of principles, but it is a principle that you and I have talked about before, that we hear what other people say through a particular filter.
Yep.
So it's like we're always generating mondegreens in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's sort of like the not breathing. There's an automatic translation that goes on based on our life history and what works and what doesn't work, what we want to hear, what we don't want to hear. And then I hear you say X, and you may or may not have said X. You may have actually said Y.
Yep.
And it's something that I learned from you, is to begin to ask, I heard you say this, is that what you meant?
Right.
And sometimes people say, yeah, but my experience is more often than not, people go, well, what I said was this.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, interesting. I heard it just a little bit differently.
Right. I have three questions when I start talking about conversations and language, and what we hear people say is, I'll ask, what did you hear me say?
Right.
I'll just say, what did you hear me say? Or I'll ask, how do you feel about what you heard me say, which has information in it? Or where did you go while I was talking? Because you ever talk to some people and they're kind of like got this glazed look on their eyes, and they're not there, and yet they're pretending or acting as if, not pretending like they're doing it on purpose, but they're listening. And it's a tangential thing where you say something triggers and or I get a memory and I go into that memory, or in this dilemma that I'm having that this is pertinent to or whatever, and I leave the conversation. Mentally, I'm still there physically looking at you and not hearing a word you're saying. And all three of those now, to me, what did you hear me say? Because I understand now that the picture I have in my mind that I choose the words to describe or talk about, nobody else can have that picture. They can have a picture close, and it's filtered through their experience. And that's not a good thing, bad thing, wrong thing. It's simply what is. So now the dialogue I'm in becomes richer, because I see that there's something available to be added to me, because I can't get whatever your picture is unless you share it with me. And that expands me or gives me a different point of view or a different aspect that I would have never come to without talking to you or whoever the you is I'm talking to. And in the group process, I pay attention. I know I have a picture of what I'm saying about the accountability tree, the obstacles, the four concepts of relationship. And I say these things. And then I ask, has anybody got any comments, questions, or concerns? And then wait for them to feed back the information that they heard me say. And a lot of times it's close, but it has never and can never be my picture. So my goal now isn't for them to get my picture, because that would be limited and everybody be walking around with my limited picture, but to dialogue with them and then see how our pictures can come together and add to each one of us. And the great minds of our time were asked, what's the solution to the global dilemmas? And their one word answer was dialogue. And this is what I'm seeing that they knew, and they were cryptic. I like cryptic because it gives me a chance to like figure out what the hell they're talking about, which is I get curious. And is that when I'm listening to you, I'm getting to know you. And the more I know you, the less likely I am to hit you or abuse you or dismiss you or redefine your reality. And then it becomes this coming together. And this is, tools that can be used in the community, in the collective consciousness also. If everybody knew this, if everybody knew that nobody could have your picture, and that we're gonna share pictures and then grow each other in the dialogue. I was talking to Pastor Lee, and he listened to me when I came to the church there with the men's group talking about language, probably this conversation. What did you hear me say? How do you feel about what you heard me say? Or where did you go? And he offered, he said, what's your take on the Tower of Babel? And I go, oh, I'm glad you asked. Because my interpretation of the Tower of Babel is this, the way the story goes, everybody had a different dialect and they didn't understand each other. Well, my understanding, based on my experience talking to people with no understanding or no conclusion or no resolution, that what happened at the Tower of Babel is we lost our connection to unity. Because in unity, I was you, you were me, and so you were important to me. So if that unity sense got taken away, then we have other, which is not me. And I have to figure out the relationship now, where before I knew it was, okay, we're doing this, or we're building this tower to God, or whatever we're doing together. And then after the Tower of Babel, the gods got mad. You're getting too close to us, so they like confused everybody. I believe that's what happened, is we lost that sense of unity or sense of intuitiveness about what was going on. So, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, I have my own individual, which is necessary for me to get the concept of I independent of other. And that's a messy process. It's been going on, what, 5, 6, 7,000 years. And now that I got the I am unique, individual. And now I can take this I and join it with other I's and build community, where we work together. And we're not all in the same think process. We're able to, with diversity, expand your I, my I, our I don't know how to say it, but come back together and do this together instead of separately.
I was saying to you before we started the podcast that I'd like to spend some time in our podcast talking about this book that I'm writing. It's called Creating Our World. And I actually spent some time on what you just described, or what I heard you describe.
Yes.
So, and only through dialogue, that is just the back and forth thing of honest sharing, can we discover the, we can get close enough to accuracy to feel comfortable about it.
Yes.
So what what I'd just like to elaborate on, one of the things that I learned from Ken Wilber, who is one of the two people I'm writing my book about, the other one being you, is that there is that consciousness proceeds in a certain fashion, which is now been around long enough, 13.9 billion years since the Big Bang, to give us the capability as people with this level of consciousness, 13.9 billion years worth of consciousness development, we can actually now look back over those billions of years and derive some hypothetical stages of the way consciousness develops. And Wilber makes this really intriguing suggestion, which I think makes sense. And he says, any level of consciousness, the first thing it's doing is answering the question, who am I? Because it's all about the great subject. It's the great I.
Mm-hmm.
And he says the development of consciousness is the expansion of the higher and higher or deeper and deeper answers to the question, who am I? Until eventually the only I left is the grand I, the only I, the real I, the God divine I, knowing itself thoroughly, completely. There's no place that does not know itself as the one subject, the I am of the burning bush in the book of Exodus.
Right.
And so what we're working on here is that I, that we're all mostly familiar with, is the I am this particular body mind.
Right.
And in the book, I talk about how what accountability taught me is most of us don't even have that one down yet because of this childhood trauma, which keeps us from owning and loving this particular body mind and being comfortable in it and thrilled by it. So but the next level, because the consciousness is evolving, this is the hypothesis, nobody has to buy this, but
Right.
this is what Wilber says, and Keller agrees. Consciousness is evolving toward I am I, and there is no other. So the next level after I am this particular body mind is what's called the transpersonal or beyond personal identity, and that is I am humanity. And that's what I was hearing you push into.
Yes.
Is that, but at that level, I equal humanity only sees the personal as a vehicle of humanity's consciousness and no longer identifies with this particular body mind as separate from all human body minds.
Right.
There's just, so it's like as if humanity was speaking as one I. So I am is a 7 billion person I.
Yep.
So we move to, but we can't, one of the theses of my book is we can't move to that until we get this one down. Because Wilber says every level of consciousness springs from the previous level. So the previous level has to be consolidated enough, strong enough, powerful enough to permit transcendence. Mm-hmm. As if considering it's of a platform on which you build to the next one. So if you're building a 4-story house and the first story foundation isn't strong enough to support the second story, you're never going to have a stable second story.
Right.
Eventually it's going to collapse.
Right.
So what we're working on from a macro perspective, this is why accountability just became so beautiful to me, is like, okay, here's a process by which I can complete the work of identifying as Marty.
Right.
And the truth is, once I complete identifying with Marty, it no longer has power. It's like, okay, what's next? It's a been there, done that kind of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I noticed in my own development of consciousness starting about 3 or 4 years ago is I was noticing even Ken Wilber was doing this. Ken would talk about in podcasts or other recordings, he would talk about human beings as they. So, well, humans, they do this and they do that. And I go, wait a minute, aren't you one of us? So I noticed that I started talking about us rather than them. And I also started noticing even in political conversations, when I'm talking about people who have a different political perspective from mine, it's still us. It's like some of us think this and some of us think that.
Right.
Moving toward that identity with humanity where everybody's in. Nobody can be outside of humanity. By definition, I am human.
Right.
So again, just without getting too esoteric here, one of the powers of this work is, in my humble opinion, is it's really a way to contribute to that expansion of consciousness to the next level.
I absolutely agree. It gave me the foundation to consider higher, I don't know if the word is ideals or concepts or principles. One of the things I've been saying for a long, long time is everybody goes. If one person doesn't go, nobody goes. So what that does for me is gives me a sense of urgency to get this information out to as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time. Now, the task seems daunting, and it gives me as a contribution point. It gives me a place marker to hold, an energy to hold, which adds to the whole. If I am humanity, then what I feel is at least able to be felt by others. I see Christ 2,000 years ago setting an energy into what I call the matrix. That's the way I frame it.
Sure.
That now people have access to it. Without him having his experience, God, man, whatever this Christ energy was, we had no example, we had no frequency to gravitate to, or no feeling tone to notice that had this energy in, so we could say, I want that too. And before that, it wasn't on the planet, and he's the one that added this frequency or awareness or knowingness or capacity into the whole. And it's 2,000 years later, and you and I are having this conversation, and I believe this conversation is on the backs of all those ancestors that went through whatever they had to go through to survive, to live, to experience, and it's been added to us, and now we get the benefit, we get to reap the benefit of their work. So if that's true, then I'm going to continue to do what I do, as daunting as the task may seem to my fragile mind, because I know, based on where I'm at, that I'm setting the foundation, the framework for generations out to continue this process of evolution. And I couldn't be more happy to do that. And knowing that I am simply where I'm at, and I accept that with actually with some awe. It's like, oh my God, Marty, you and I are having this conversation. We're sitting on a blue ball, spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, going around a fireball of a sun every 365 days in a friggin' void. And we're having this conversation. Are you kidding me? This is profound. It blows my mind. It's incredible to me. It's like, holy shit, look where we're at. And the universe has been working, but the word seems today to be diligently for 13.59 billion years so that we could do this. Are you kidding? Okay, I'm putting in my part. If everybody for 13.9 billion years put in their part, I'm putting in my measly, I'm going to say 102 years. I got about 32 more years to go. So I'm putting in my part and doing it with gratitude and joy, and recognizing the struggle that I have and being with it.
Well, a couple comments if you're open.
Yeah.
One of the things that it's valuable, I think, for me and you and anybody listening here to appreciate, and this is really difficult to communicate, is Jesus was no different from you and me.
Right.
He was a human being who had his particular gifts and his particular capacity, and he had this experience that you were describing, where who knows why, doesn't matter, doesn't matter why, he had this experience that there's only one thing going on. And then he expressed it in words that got written down 30, 40 years after he died. So we don't really know if these were his exact words, but the words that came to us as he said things like, the Father and I are one. Greater things than this you will do. I mean, the scriptures are full of information. If you hear it through these ears, you go, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And he was just a human being. Just is not the appropriate adverb. He was a human being like you and me.
Right.
Which means that each one of us has the exact same potential.
Yes.
For that aha. And I would suggest that many of us have that aha moment. It just isn't permanent the way it became permanent for him.
Somehow, some way.
We've already had aha moments of great clarity and collapse of separation experience, expansion into something, again, words fail, unity experience, one, whatever. In fact, I would suggest that we're having that experience right now. We're just not aware of it.
Correct. One of the friends in the men's work I did in the 90s and beyond wrote a book called Ordinary Enlightenment. And he talked about this. He talked about events in our lives or moments in our lives where we felt elation or we felt this joy or we witnessed something that was miraculous. And it's like we all have these moments of clarity or however you call them. And people want to make it other ordinary instead of extraordinary. It's like it's in the ordinariness. Are you kidding me? Ordinary? 13.5 billion years of somebody's hard work to manifest this space for us. Okay, we can call that ordinary, but it's phenomenal. It just, every time I think about this, it blows my mind. And I got this when I heard Eckhart Tolle talk about the earth, and he talked about it being this blue jewel. And he had this tone and tenor in his voice that just struck me. And I had this feeling of awe at this blue ball manifesting in the void. And then all this activity that we're doing, and it was just a wow moment. Like, I get it. Oh my God, thank you. It was incredible.
And each one of us is an absolute expression of that 13.9 billion year blue ball void thing. And it's ironic that we spend a lot of time in our work and also in 12-step work looking at so-called character defects, and we're looking at obstacles and those kinds of things, and yet they're all part of the deal. They're like necessary parts of the deal. That's, again, something I work on conveying in the book. It's like, it all belongs. It all has an evolutionary purpose.
Yes.
And part of it, the way I see it for right now, we're going through this extraordinary period that's weird compared to what I experienced growing up. You have this woke and all these other things that feel unpleasant, but what if it's just the way evolution has to go through trial and error? It has to try stuff to see what works, because nothing's preordained.
Right.
It's just like nothing in your life or my life is preordained for tomorrow. I mean, there's all of this stuff that we're bringing to tomorrow, and there's that evolutionary reality we're bringing, and yet tomorrow is going to be a surprise.
Yeah.
And that all of evolution behaves that way. It's trial and error continuously. And part of our challenge is that our little brains are not really yet adapted to living with that as just a given reality. We still are learning. We're still struggling. And again, I think that the work that we're doing is making its little contribution to expanding the capacity of human beings to go, this is all great.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
fucking great.
Yeah.
It's like, and so, what part can I play consciously?
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me of the time you asked me how I was doing, and I said, I'm reveling in my character defects.
Yeah.
It was one of those moments where I knew, okay, I'll do it. All right, I set it up. I participate. What do I want? It's like, one of the things I want is less of this. Is my intent to walk and be peace and compassion with all heart, over mind. That doesn't mean I don't struggle. That doesn't mean I don't feel conflict. That doesn't mean I don't feel. In fact, it means that I feel deeply. And in this world, feeling deeply, you see the tragedy all around you, along with the beauty and the grace and the sublimeness and all that other stuff. And you feel deeply, you hurt deeply. It's like Christ at the Mount of Olives, looking at Jerusalem and just weeping. He knew, and yet and based on what we say about him, is he had the power to change it, and he just, no, this is it. This is what's going to happen, and he wept. And then he got to the Garden of Gethsemane and wept blood. I mean, he sweated blood. Okay, that's deep feeling. You want to be a ascended master? Check yourself here. It's like, and okay, my answer is, well, do I want to be a ascended master? Yes. Yeah, I do. Okay, someday. Okay, I'm building the foundation. Yes, I want it. Whatever it is, I want it. So.
Yeah, again, I suggest that everyone's already this ascended master. We're not ascended in consciousness.
Right.
But I already have everything I need for that experience.
Yes.
And I'm okay if it doesn't happen.
Yes. Yes.
It's like, it's not, I've come to, again, everything I say is a hypothesis. It could be utterly wrong, or I could change my mind tomorrow. So, but it seems to me that if everything is an expression of the one thing that's going on behind all the appearances, then there's nothing to fear and there's nothing to secure. It's all good. It's just all what it is, and it's the opportunity that we're engaged here is to explore what's there, because there's so much more there. I mean, even Jesus in his humanity probably said, there's still more for me to learn here.
Yes.
Which is not the same, because knowledge is not the same thing as consciousness.
Right.
Wow. So in that higher consciousness, you still be aware it's like one of the arguments that Wilber has made about God is that God can't know the future any more than you or I can.
That's interesting.
If there's development, and there appears to be a development. So even God, but God can be conscious that it doesn't matter what he knows or not.
Right.
That's not essential. What's essential is being who we are.
Yeah, and we're using this limited resource of intelligence and reason and rationale to try to figure out something that has no basis in rationale whatsoever. It's consciousness. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Again, can I not only bless trial and error, but can I identify with trial and error as opposed to resisting, criticizing, fearing?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And as you said, and Ken Wilber says, we're each a walking laboratory of all of this.
Yes.
We have everything that we need to have this exploration, and we can forget it tomorrow and pick it up on the day after. Because we're always present with ourselves.
One of the things that validated my concepts that I couldn't articulate is when you and I talk about Ken Wilber, and Ken Wilber talks about the color scheme, and that there's a foundational process, and that wherever you're at, that's the work of the foundation for the next level. And in developmental psychology, and this is different than Ken Wilber's, or maybe it's the same, it's a poorly there's not a whole lot of light shown on developmental psychology, but I can see in my own process that what I could have gotten as an infant or a toddler or preteen would have been a foundation for me to explore my authenticity and other things. And I didn't get that foundation. So this accountability work for me, this recovery work, this 4 constants of relationship, offer me the opportunity to embody this foundational thing that I didn't get as a child, like trust, you know, surrendering to my feelings and trusting that somebody will be there, or a sense of self-worth. That's a foundational platform. I talked to my grandson, and he knows he rocks. I say, "How you doing?" I'm great. I'm good. I'm the best. Watch this. I'll show you." And it's like he's developing that foundation of worthiness. He knows he is capable, and trust, surrender, and then a sense of belonging, abandonment, rejection, separation. And when you have that, no matter what you do, somebody will be there to support you instead of outcast or ostracize you. You're free to explore. And I didn't get that foundation. I'm getting it through my own recovery 12-step process, and then this intentional living, which has amplified the ability to build these foundations. And it's like I'm trusting. I've surrendered. Shit, I know I rock. I'm the worthiness thing. And you can't, nobody can abandon me. The only person that can abandon me is me. And I refuse to do it. So you do what you want. It can look to anybody, all kinds of different things. To me, it's you doing what you want, and I belong. I know my place. So, and then we can explore what's coming next, whatever that is. And I'm open to do it. Or in this case, talk about this so that other people have the opportunity to kind of piece together where they're at, what they want, what do they need to work on, what's their where are they at? Are they afraid of abandonment? Well, okay, join the group. Say we won't leave you. I mean, you say whatever you want. You're still part of the group. And I'm talking about the 12-step group, or one of the group meetings that you or I facilitate. And it builds this foundation for people to explore their authenticity, to explore their creativity, to explore the gift that they were at the beginning, birth, that is their contribution, their diverse, unique way of seeing something that adds to the community and grows the community and creates safety for everybody. It's just incredible.
And if I could just add, it gives us the opportunity to experience unconditional love.
Yes. Wow. Well put. Yeah.
So that, for me, that's always the foundational thing. So all of those things that I heard you describing come from my sense of being loved, and that my love is accepted by those whom I love.
Right.
So the virtuous cycle. And so for those of you who are watching this for the first or few early times, what this accountability process is a very direct, physical, because it goes to the emotional body, way of recovering the love that we came into this world with and may have lost.
Yes.
Or thought we lost. Because what does a baby know?
Right.
A baby knows nothing. A baby only feels, and a baby is when we come into this world, we are so sensitive to warmth, cold, hunger, wet, pain. And if those things don't get into some kind of solution, if I'm too hot and I don't get cooled down, if I'm hungry and I don't get fed, if I'm hurting and I don't get healed, then I'm automatically going to develop some kind of defense against that happening.
Right.
And since I don't have the power to actually create an effective defense, lots of crazy things happen in my psychology early on, over which I have no control.
And sets the foundation for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
In a fixed, traumatized belief about what's really going on, and you don't have privy to it because it's subconscious, it's
Right.
pre-verbal, it's frequency. And then this crazy behavior that I exemplified of screaming, yelling, leaving, punching, accusing, became normalized. And it's like I had no way out. It was like I was stuck.
I mean, I even go so far as to hypothesize that our emotional traumas of age 0 to 3 actually teach our thinking mind as it emerges to support that emotional state.
Yes, I agree.
So whatever once I start having conscious thoughts around 4 or 5, however old, whatever that kind of light of self-consciousness gets turned on, it's already been determined. That's that foundation that you were referring to. That's what I hear. It's already been determined how my thinking mind is going to be utterly trained by my emotional body. And my thinking mind can't go, well, this is wrong. I don't need this.
No.
It's like, it's that story you've told on this podcast before. It's like, you can't take it. Our mind can't say, I'm taking my little diapered butt in there. I'm going to tell those adults to stop the crap.
Right.
That this can't happen.
No.
And so it's important for people who are drawn to this work to just appreciate that there was this foundation that we're dealing with here, and we're working on creating a different foundation. And the good news is, we don't have to jettison the foundation that we got. We can actually transform it. It's got value and power for us because it's who we are.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that when I started doing this work, and I observe other people do this work, that I've never seen someone not come up with an answer to a question that gets asked. Particularly when someone is like, you ask somebody, what do you want? And if you give people enough time and space and compassion, they'll produce the answer. So even with all of this stuff that we had, there's something even deeper that we're founded upon, which I say is our humanity.
Yes.
The humanity itself is a loving, growing, creative species designed to expand consciousness in this universe through this trial and error thing that we go through. And we happen to be blessed to live at a time in the evolutionary trajectory where we have a lot of information about this trajectory that even 300-400 years ago, our ancestors didn't have.
Right.
They had insights. They had the same insights. Because the Jesus insight, the Buddha insight, they'd been around several thousand years. But they didn't have the science. They didn't have neurology. They didn't have physiology. They didn't know the endocrine system. They didn't know the shadow. They didn't know all of these things that we've been privileged to discover and study in the last couple hundred years. And they certainly didn't have accountability. So here we are, as you said, standing on the shoulders of these giants, making our own contribution. And how could it be otherwise? That's who we are. That's who human beings are.
Right. And I picture my children's children, grandchildren standing on my shoulders and doing whatever they're going to do because I'm doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah. And we can't even imagine what they're going to be doing.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, there's a lot that we get to take on faith.
Well, if we're the humanity it's actually us going to be doing it on our own shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's metaphorically true, particularly if I'm willing to give up identifying as this body mind, as Marty, as Marty, 70, almost 70-year-old, born in a certain time and place, having this certain basket of experiences. What if there's more to it than that? Or what if this is all necessary so that we can experience the more to it?
Mm-hmm.
So that we can, and I think that's one of the beauties of, first of all, I loved your expression of that Jesus message. He may have been the first to basically say, everyone's all right.
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing a sermon by one of my minister mentors who said that Jesus brought this radical notion that had never existed anywhere in any religion of humanity up until that time, that the God loves you. That was had never been uttered before. The God or gods before Jesus came and said God is love, were all demanding kind of, tribal chieftain voices. Behave or we're all screwed.
Right, punishing God.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden there's this guy comes along and goes, no, God loves you just the way you are. It's like,
Just the way you are.
It's actually kind of impressive that it's only taken 2,000 years to socialize that information. And we're not there yet, obviously, but that's not all that much time.
No, it's not. And yeah, in the 13.5 billion.
Yeah.
Concept, yeah.
Yeah, the numerator denominator there is kind of 0.000000
Well,
something.
And each epic is getting shorter. It's like we're spending a less period of time developing whatever foundation we're developing. It's like it's speeding up. It's like, even in my own practice, people that come to me are embodying something quicker. When I first started, it could be, one or two guys a year. Now it's like I don't know, let's just for numbers say 50% are going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And it's like before it was, I'm like, okay, here comes John. He's going to tell us all this bubble-heady, poo-poo, new agey shit. But they listen. I mean, and then one person would go, oh my God, I get it. There was a kid in my class that was there for 6 months, and he would just sit in the back and just be quiet, and which was good with me. And then a couple of weeks before he was to get out, he goes, oh my God. And he hit the desk, and I go, oh, did you get it? And he said, yeah. Wow, John. And I said, oh, good for you. And it was something about the accountability process, about what that gives them. And who gets it, what gets it, that's my judgment of who gets it, what gets it. And it has nothing to do with what's really going on. It's just my perception. Although I am perceiving that we're in a period of time where time is speeding up, and yet I'm feeling more alive for longer in the same amount of time. I'm experiencing more life, and the environment is conducive to this message. I don't know how else to say it. That's the best way I could say it. Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna end there.
Well, we're coming to the end of our hour. I want to invite anybody who would like to experience what the heck we're talking about. So we're talking about accountability, which is a group process. It's a process of self-discovery that's done in group. And it's a process with a very simple 2, 3, 4 step, however you want to break it down, inquiry. And you don't have to do it on your own. John facilitates meetings, I facilitate meetings, several colleagues facilitate meetings to help you look at and answer some of these questions for yourself. Like, what do you want in your life? So we do these meetings on Zoom, and at the end of the podcast, there'll be John's email address or my email address and just shoot us a note and we'll be happy to send you an invitation. We have meetings Monday, Tuesday, Thursday nights, and Saturday mornings. So please feel free to check that out. And so everybody's welcome. You don't have to say anything. As John talked about the gentleman who sat in the back of the room for 6 months, you don't have to say anything, or you can jump right in. I've seen people do both. So please feel free to join us and check it out. Any last minute words of wisdom or humor or both before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I was thinking about that a couple of minutes before. I knew you were going to ask me that. And what I wanted to say is, you're not alone. Whoever's listening to this, maybe for the first time, or you are not alone. When I first stepped into a recovery meeting and I just listened to what they read, I thought, oh my God, somebody wrote it down. Somebody said, how did they know what I was going through? So this family of origin trauma, it is widespread, and you're not unique in your trauma. You may be unique in your gift, which is what we're looking at, and this trauma is felt by a lot of people. Any group you go to, 12-step group or our group, I just want you to know that you're welcome and that we're looking forward to seeing you.
All right. Thanks,
Okay.
everybody, for joining us. Thank you, John Donovan.
Okay, Marty, thank you.
Look forward to the next time.
You got it.
Take care.
Uh-huh.